Alrighty, boob tubes and tickety talk land. So with everything going on, somebody kindly reminded me, cheers Shug, about this Wesley Clark interview back in the day. He's a 4-star general. You can go and check him out. Very interesting dude with a long military career. And he came out with a statement on democracy now, which you could say is very much on the left of politics over in the States. I can't, for the life of me, 10 minutes of searching, for the life of me, find a date on this. It's actually quite hard to actually find the interview itself, but I thought it would be worthwhile with everything that's going on. Oh, wrong button. Thought it would be interesting with everything that's going on to have a wee rerun.
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia,
Syria,
and Sudan,
tried.
and back to Iran. So when
What's happening in
you
Sudan?
look at Iran, you say, is it a replay? It's not exactly.
Just out of curiosity. What do you think? Do you think there'll be anything interesting happening in Sudan right now? Oh, beautiful. 1 day ago. Al Jazeera top. Funnily enough. Army accuses civilians of spying for the RSF parliamentary based on ethnic grounds, leading to arrest, torture and killings. Now that place is going swimmingly.
Replay. But here's the truth, that Iran from the beginning has seen that the presence of the United States in Iraq was a threat. A blessing, because we took out Saddam Hussein and the Baathists. They couldn't handle them. We took care of it for them. But also a threat because they knew that they were next on the hit list. And so, of course, they got engaged. They lost 1 million people during the war with Iraq. And they've got a long and unprotectable, unsecurable border. So it was in their vital interest to be deeply involved inside Iraq. They tolerated our attacks on the Baathists. They were happy we captured Saddam Hussein, but they're building up their own network of influence and to...
Remember the context, this is on a very left-leaning media outlet. This dude had, I think George Bush was in power at the time, that's why he's talking about Dick Cheney and all that jazz. So he had like sort of the neocon vibe going on. And he was running for office. I think there was talk about him running for president at one point. So bear that in mind. So I'm just saying, it's very interesting what he's saying, especially as things has panned out. But there's also a reason why he's saying this shit, because he's coming across as the peace president and trying to win votes away from the neocons at the time, George Bush and his cabal.
A minute, they occasionally give some military assistance and training and advice, either directly or indirectly, to both the insurgents and to the militias. And in that sense, it's not exactly parallel, because there has been, I believe, continuous Iranian engagement. Some of it legitimate, some of it illegitimate. I mean, you can hardly fault Iran because they're offering to do eye operations for Iraqis who need medical attention. That's not an offense that you can go to war over, perhaps, but it is an effort to gain influence. And the administration has stubbornly refused to talk with Iran about their perception, in part because they don't want to pay the price with their our U.S. domestic political base, the right-wing base, but also because they don't want to legitimate a government that they've been trying to overthrow. If you were Iran, you'd probably believe that you were mostly already at war with the United States anyway, since we've asserted that their government needs regime change. So, and we've asked Congress to appropriate $75 million to do it.
I think this was the mid-2000s.
And we are supporting terrorist groups, apparently, who are
10 to 15 years ago.
infiltrating and blowing up things inside Iran. And if we're not doing it, let's put it this way, we're probably cognizant of it and encouraging it. So it's not surprising that we're moving to a point of confrontation and crisis with Iran. My point on this is not that the Iranians are good guys, they're not, but that you shouldn't use force except as a last resort. There is a military option, but it's a bad one.
I wanted to get your response to Seymour Hersh's piece in The New Yorker to two key points this week. Reporting the Pentagon's established a special planning group within the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a bombing attack on Iran. That this is coming as the Bush administration and Saudi Arabia are pumping money for covert operations into many areas of the Middle East, including Lebanon, Syria, and Iran,
ISIS,
in an effort to strengthen Saudi-supported Sunni Islam groups and weaken Iranian ISIS-backed Shias. Some of the covert money has been given to jihadist groups in Lebanon with ties
ISIS, Hamas,
to Al-Qaeda. Fighting the Shia.
Al-Qaeda, what are you talking about? They get relegated, man, and then went bust. Is that what happened? What happened to Al-Qaeda? Remember them? Remember? Oh, Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda's gonna get you.
Shias by funding with Prince Bandar and then with U.S. money not approved by Congress, funding the
She
Sunnis
does look like a
connected
corpse,
to
doesn't
Al-Qaeda.
she, for some reason?
Well, I don't have any direct information to confirm it or deny it. It's certainly plausible.
Right, there you go. So, what does that say? Former presidential campaign candidate? I think that's what it... Can I see because that stupid red line?
Well, the Saudis have taken a more active role.
Aye.
You know, the Saudis...
You were just in Saudi Arabia. You just came back from Saudi
Yeah, well,
Arabia.
the Saudis have basically recognized that they have an enormous stake in the outcome in Iraq, and they don't particularly trust the judgment of the United States in this area. We haven't exactly proved our competence in Iraq.
So if you want to finish that off, the details are on your screen. You will be able to get it easy enough. But very interesting, especially in today's context. Granted, he's saying like, what was that, 7 countries in 5 years, right? That was like the mid-2000s, I think. Maybe 2010-ish. So they're not on schedule, but if you go and look at all these areas of the planet, they're certainly not peaceful, thriving areas. They're all in severe turmoil. Get it? Got it? Good. Catchies. No cats or cheese were used in this filming.